My sister didn't shout. She looked straight at me, calm and confident, and said, "You're too toxic. Get out." The room went quiet. My mom avoided my eyes. My stepdad didn't say a word. So I stood up, picked up my bag, and left without arguing. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg. I just walked away. 7 days later, my phone started ringing nonstop. Her voice was panicked, almost breathless. Why did I get an eviction notice? That was when she finally realized something she never expected. Toxic people don't let sisters live rent-free forever. Before I explain how it got there, tap like and comment where you're listening from, especially if setting boundaries ever made you the villain. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 35 and I work as a dentist. Most days, my life looks calm from the outside. Clean white coats, quiet exam rooms, the low hum of equipment in the background. People usually tell me I seem put together. What they don't see is how much of that calm was built by learning how to swallow discomfort without making a sound. My family wasn't always like this. When my biological father passed away, everything shifted quietly like furniture moved in the dark. My mom remarried a few years later. That's how my stepfather came into our lives along with his daughter, my stepsister. On paper, we became a blended family. In real life, it felt more like a balancing act that never quite settled. Growing up, I learned early that I was the capable one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need much. If something needed to be handled, it usually landed on me. Not because anyone said it out loud, but because I didn't complain when it did. I went to school, built a career, paid my own bills. Independence became my default setting. The person who made me feel seen was my grandmother. She had this small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but warm in a way that mattered. The smell of old books. Soft curtains that let the afternoon light in just right. She used to say that a place should feel like it's waiting for you. When she passed that apartment, came to me, not as a prize, but as a responsibility, something she trusted me with. At the time, my stepsister was struggling. New relationship, unstable finances, lots of big dreams, and very little planning. My mom framed it gently, just temporary, just until they figured things out. The apartment was empty anyway. Family helps family, right? So I said yes. At first it felt reasonable. I didn't need the extra income immediately. I was managing my own mortgage, keeping track of my payments, juggling everyday expenses. Letting her live there rent-free seemed like the kind thing to do. I told myself it was short-term, a year maybe less. But months passed, then more months. Conversations about timelines turned vague. Requests stopped sounding like requests. Utilities were covered, but everything else, repairs, upkeep, little unexpected costs, somehow found their way back to me. And every time I felt a flicker of doubt, I pushed it down. I didn't want to be the difficult one, the selfish one. Looking back, that was the pattern. I gave quietly. They took comfortably, and the more normal it became for them, the less normal it felt for me. I just didn't realize yet how expensive that silence was going to be. Things didn't explode all at once. They never do. They stretch, they creep, they disguise themselves as normal conversations until one day you realize you're already standing in the middle of something ugly. It started with comments, little ones. My stepsister would text things like, "We might need help with a few things this month," without ever saying what those things were. When I asked, she'd reply hours later with a list that sounded more like expectations than requests. Repairs, furniture, a small upgrade she felt the apartment deserved. I noticed she never used words like if or maybe anymore. Then the wedding talk began. At first it was just excitement, venues she liked, colors she was considering. I listened, nodded, offered neutral responses while I flossed between patients at work or sat in traffic after long days. Then the numbers started floating into the conversation, rounded, casual, like they were weather updates, not financial realities. And every time I hesitated, my mom would smooth it over. "She's just stressed," she'd say. "You know how weddings are." I told myself I was imagining the pressure, that no one was actually expecting me to carry this. Until the dinner. My mom invited me over, said it would be nice to all sit together. No agenda, just family. When I walked in, there were extra place settings on the table, people I didn't know. My stepsister's future in-laws. I should have turned around right then. Instead, I smiled and took off my coat. Dinner felt staged. Compliments aimed in my direction. Questions about my work, about how well I was doing. The kind of attention that makes your shoulders tighten because you can feel the ask coming before it arrives. And then it did. My stepsister cleared her throat and launched into the plan. Not just the wedding, but the vision. What it should look like. What it should feel like. What it deserved to be. She talked numbers without blinking. When she finally turned to me, her smile didn't reach her eyes. I said I wanted to help. I said I just couldn't be responsible for everything, that I had limits. That's when the air shifted. She laughed. Not a joke laugh, a dismissive one. Someone across the table made a comment about how easy it must be for me. My stepfather chimed in, reminding me how much family had supported me over the years. My mom stayed quiet. That silence felt louder than anything else. I tried to explain, calmly, carefully. That's when my stepsister leaned back, crossed her arms, and said it. "You're being toxic." The word landed hard, like it had been waiting for the right moment, like it was meant to shut me down, not start a conversation. And when I looked around the table, no one corrected her. No one defended me. In that moment, I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't about money. It was about control. And I was done pretending not to see it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because everything finally made sense, and my brain wouldn't stop replaying it. The smiles, the way the conversation had been steered, the silence that followed when I was labeled the problem. I kept hearing that word in my head over and over like it had rewired the way they saw me. The next morning, I went through my routine on autopilot. Shower, coffee, keys. My reflection in the mirror looked the same, but something underneath had shifted. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was clear. For days, I didn't hear from anyone. No apology, no follow-up, just quiet. The kind of quiet that only exists when people assume you'll come back on your own, when they believe time will soften you into compliance. Instead, I started paying attention. I pulled out my notebook and listed what I'd been covering. Payments here, bills there, small things that added up over time. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't plotting. I was just being honest with myself for the first time about how long this had been going on, about how normal it had started to feel to give without being asked, and how wrong that was. A few days later, I met with a lawyer I'd known casually for years, someone steady, no drama. We sat across from each other in a quiet office in the city, sunlight hitting the edge of his desk. I explained everything without embellishment. The apartment, the lack of any formal agreement, the dinner, the word that ended everything. He listened, then nodded. What he told me was simple, clear. I wasn't doing anything wrong by reclaiming what was legally mine. There were steps, notices, timelines. Nothing aggressive, nothing unethical, just boundaries on paper. That word again, boundaries. I went home and sat in my car for a long time before getting out. The steering wheel was cold under my hands. I thought about my grandmother, about how she'd trusted me with that apartment, about how she always said kindness shouldn't cost you your dignity. That night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't send messages. I didn't announce anything. I followed the process exactly as I was advised. Calmly, quietly. A notice was prepared. Professional. Neutral. No emotion attached. When I dropped it off at the post office in my neighborhood, it felt strangely ordinary, like mailing a utility payment, like closing a chapter that had been overdue for an ending. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew the silence was about to break. The first call came 3 days later. I was at home, shoes kicked off near the door, reheating leftovers while the city hummed outside my window. My phone buzzed on the counter. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. It buzzed again and again. By the time I picked it up, there were missed calls stacked on top of each other like she'd been dialing without stopping, afraid that if she paused for even a second, the ground under her feet would give out completely. When I finally answered, she didn't say hello. Why did I get an eviction notice? Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. No confidence, no attitude. Just panic, thin and exposed. I could hear someone else in the background talking fast, asking questions. Probably my mom. Maybe my stepfather. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I leaned against the kitchen counter and let the silence stretch. "You can't be serious." she went on, her words tumbling over each other. "This has to be some kind of mistake. Mom said you'd calm down. She said you were just emotional." Emotional. That word again. Another attempt to shrink me. "There's no mistake," I said evenly. My voice sounded steady even to me. "You were told the arrangement was temporary. It ended." Her breathing changed. "Faster now. You didn't even warn us," she snapped. "You just did this behind our backs." I almost laughed. Almost. I thought about the dinner table, the way they'd looked at me while waiting for an answer, the way no one had warned me before deciding what I was supposed to give. "I didn't do it behind your back," I said. "I did it without an argument." That seemed to hit harder than yelling would have. The calls didn't stop after that. Messages came in waves. Confusion turned into anger, anger into bargaining. She offered timelines, promises, excuses. At one point, my mom got on the line, her voice tight with forced calm. "This is getting out of hand," she said. "We're family. We can talk this through." I asked her one question. Was I family at that dinner? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. 2 days later, they showed up at my place. I looked through the peephole before opening the door. My stepsister stood closest, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mom hovered behind her eyes, already glossy. My stepfather stared past them both like he didn't want to be there but didn't know how to step away. I didn't invite them in. My stepsister spoke first. "You embarrassed us," she said. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" I studied her face, the familiar one I'd made excuses for years ago. And suddenly I saw it clearly. This wasn't fear of losing a home. This was fear of losing access. "You told me to get out," I said quietly. "So I did." "That's not what I meant," she snapped. I was upset. "You were comfortable," I replied. "There's a difference." My mom stepped forward. "Honey, she didn't mean it like that. You know how she is. We all say things we regret." I nodded. "And we all live with the consequences of what we say." My stepfather cleared his throat. "Let's be practical," he said. "You don't need the apartment. You're doing fine. Why make this harder than it has to be?" That sentence landed heavier than all the others, because it finally said the quiet part out loud. I looked at him and felt something in me settle completely. "This isn't about need," I said. "It's about ownership and respect." My stepsister scoffed. "So what, you're punishing us now?" I shook my head. "No, I'm opting out." She stared at me like she was trying to recalibrate the situation, to find the right lever. Then her voice dropped sharp again. "You're being toxic." There it was, the word she'd been holding on to like a weapon. I didn't flinch. "Toxic people," I said slowly. "Don't allow sisters to live rent-free in their apartments." The words didn't come out angry. They came out final. For a moment, no one spoke. My mom's mouth opened, then closed. My stepfather looked down at his shoes. My stepsister's face flushed, then drained, as if she'd finally realized something fundamental had shifted. "You can't just throw us out," she said weakly. "Where are we supposed to go?" I met her eyes. "That's a question you should have asked before you decided I didn't deserve basic respect." Her confidence crumbled after that. She tried apologizing, then blaming, then apologizing again. Each version sounded rehearsed, like she was flipping through scripts, hoping one of them would still work on me. None of them did. "I'll give you the time outlined in the notice," I said. "Nothing more. Nothing less." My mom reached for my arm. I stepped back. "This isn't cruelty," I added. "This is a boundary." They left shortly after that. Not dramatically, just quietly. The kind of quiet that follows when people realize they've pushed too far and there's no way to undo it. The remaining weeks passed with surprising calm. No more calls, no more messages, just space. On the final day, I didn't go inside the apartment. I stayed across the street, sitting in my car, watching them load boxes. My stepsister avoided looking in my direction. My mom moved slowly, like the weight of it all had finally caught up to her. When they were done, my stepsister walked over and placed the keys on the hood of my car. Her hand lingered for a second, like she wanted to say something else. She didn't. They drove away without looking back. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The apartment was quiet after they left. Not empty quiet. The kind of quiet that settles instead of echoing. I walked through the room slowly, noticing things I hadn't before. Scuffed walls, a loose cabinet hinge, Ordinary wear that told a story without emotion attached to it. I took care of what needed fixing. Small repairs, fresh paint, nothing dramatic. Within a few weeks, the place had new tenants. Reliable, respectful. The payments came in on time, predictable, uncomplicated. For the first time, the apartment felt like what my grandmother intended it to be, stable, not strained. My family didn't reach out again. Not with apologies, not with demands. The silence felt different now, lighter, like I'd set something down that I'd been carrying for years without realizing how heavy it was. I focused on my own life. Work felt easier, evenings felt longer. I started saying no without rehearsing explanations in my head. That alone changed everything. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost the illusion that love requires self-erasure, and that loss gave me something I hadn't had before: peace. For a long time, I carried the word toxic like a scar. Every time I replayed that dinner in my head, I wondered if I'd been too cold, too firm, too unwilling to sacrifice one more piece of myself. Families have a way of teaching you that love is measured by how much you're willing to lose. But here's what I finally learned. The moment you stop being useful, people who live on entitlement will call you names that sound like moral judgments. Toxic, selfish, heartless. Those words aren't diagnoses. They're protests. They're what happens when access is revoked and boundaries replace convenience. I didn't destroy my family. I stepped out of a role that was slowly destroying me. Life is quieter now, not empty, just honest. I spend my time, energy, and money on things that grow instead of drain me. And the peace that comes from that is worth more than any approval I was chasing before. If this story feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Share where you're listening from and what boundary changed your life. It might help someone else feel seen too. And if you want more real stories about family betrayal, quiet revenge, and choosing self-respect, make sure you subscribe.